People like to pretend retirement is a math problem with one elegant answer. Wait longer, get a bigger Social Security check, and declare victory. That sounds tidy. It sounds rational. It sounds like the sort of advice that can fit on a postcard, which is one reason so many people repeat it with confidence. But I have spent my life watching what happens when neat little formulas collide with real human lives. And when it comes to Social Security, the slogan most people hear is often too simple to be useful. Wait until 67. Better yet, wait until 70. Maximize the check. I understand why that message is popular. It is easy to explain. It gives the impression of discipline. It flatters the listener by making patients sound automatically intelligent. The trouble is that retirement income is not just about maximizing one monthly payment in isolation. It is about how all the moving parts fit together. It is about what account you draw from first. It is about whether your money is compounding or being liquidated. It is about taxes. It is about your spouse. It is about your health. It is about the years in your life when you still have the energy to use money the way money is supposed to be used, which is to buy freedom. That is why I want to walk through a truth that many retirees only discover too late. In some situations, taking Social Security at 62 is not a desperate move. It is not a sign that you failed. It is not reckless. It can be the most rational choice on the board, and not because the government suddenly got generous, because the usual advice is built around one narrow variable while real retirement requires you to think like an allocator. I have always believed that good decisions come from viewing the whole chessboard. If you focus on one piece and ignore the rest, you can lose with beautiful logic. That happens all the time in retirement planning. A person hears that delaying Social Security increases the monthly benefit, and from that point on the entire discussion becomes emotionally rigged. Bigger later sounds better than smaller. Now, but bigger later is only better if later arrives on the terms you imagined, with the health you assumed, the tax picture you expected, the household structure you still have, and the investment account balance you did not quietly drain while waiting. Most people never frame the problem that way. They compare one check to another check. I compare one life to another life. Suppose a retiree is 62 and has accumulated a few $100,000 in a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, a 401k, or some combination of all three. Suppose that person needs income. Now, the popular script says, do not touch Social Security yet, delay it so the future check grows. But that advice skips the first serious question. If you are not drawing Social Security, where does the money come from for the next 5 to 8 years? It does not float down from heaven. It comes from your savings. That means you are selling assets, shrinking tax-advantaged accounts, interrupting compounding, and reducing the future base from which returns can grow. And that damage is often hidden because people are hypnotized by the larger Social Security number, waiting for them down the road. Let me put it plainly. When you delay Social Security, you are not just choosing to wait. You are choosing what gets sacrificed during the waiting period. For some people, what gets sacrificed is not trivial. It is the part of the retirement portfolio that had the best chance to keep working quietly in the background. Take a simple case. A 62-year-old retiree has $300,000 in retirement accounts and needs $4,000 a month to live comfortably. If Social Security at 62 would provide roughly $2,000 a month, then claiming now means the retiree may only need to pull another $2,000 a month from investments. Over 8 years, that is vastly different from withdrawing the full $4,000 a month while waiting until age 70. The difference is not cosmetic. It is enormous. One path asks the portfolio to carry the entire burden while you delay your benefits. The other path turns Social Security into a bridge, reducing the withdrawals and leaving more capital in place. And capital that remains in place has a chance to compound. That is the part people forget. I have spent decades watching what compounding does when you give it time, and what happens when you interrupt it at the wrong moment. A dollar withdrawn in your early 60s is not just a dollar gone. It is the future earnings on that dollar gone too. That lost future is invisible, which is why people underestimate it. If the account is earning 6% or 7% over time, reducing withdrawals can leave a surprisingly larger balance by age 70. Not a slightly larger balance, a meaningfully larger one. And that larger balance continues to matter after 70. It can produce more income, more flexibility, and more protection when markets are volatile or health costs rise. If the untouched or less touched account is a Roth IRA, the argument gets even more interesting. Roth money compounds tax-free. It has no required minimum distributions under current rules for the original owner. It can be an unusually valuable pool of optionality later in life. So if taking Social Security at 62 allows you to leave Roth assets alone longer, you are not merely grabbing a smaller check early. You may be preserving the best long-duration compounding engine in your entire household balance sheet. Even in traditional IRAs and 401ks where growth is tax-deferred rather than tax-free, leaving assets invested longer still matters. Yes, taxes come later, but later is not the same as now. A deferred tax bill is not ideal, but it is still preferable to prematurely liquidating a productive asset if the alternative is driven by lazy thinking. And if your income is lower in the early years of retirement, you may gain another valuable option. You may be able to do partial Roth conversions in a lower bracket while receiving Social Security and drawing less aggressively from the portfolio. That is the kind of layered advantage simplistic advice rarely discusses. People like one-dimensional rules because they remove the burden of thought. Unfortunately, money punishes people who insist on being simple in a world that is not. Another issue people wave away too casually is break-even analysis. You hear this all the time. If you take Social Security at 62, you get less each month. If you wait until full retirement age or until 70, you get more. Therefore, there is some age at which waiting wins. That is true in a narrow arithmetic sense. But the way many people talk about break-even ages makes it sound as if the question is settled by finding a line on a chart. It is not break, even math is a tool, not a verdict. Suppose filing at 62 produces more total benefits until around the late 70s or early 80s, while filing later overtakes it only if you live longer than that. Fine, now the real thinking begins. What are the odds you personally will get there? Not the average person. You. What does your family history look like? What does your current health look like? Are there chronic conditions, stress factors, mobility issues, or warning signs that make the textbook answer less attractive? This is the part polite financial conversations often avoid because people dislike bringing mortality into the room. I think avoiding reality is a terrible habit. You do not improve a decision by removing the uncomfortable variables. You only blind yourself. If a person has strong evidence that longevity may be below the rosy assumptions built into the standard delay advice, then claiming early is not pessimism. It is realism. Every month you delay is a month. You decline to collect a benefit you spent decades paying into. There is no trophy for dying with the most optimized hypothetical check. And there is certainly no prize for spending your healthiest years guarding a future income stream you may not live long enough to enjoy. That leads to a point I consider central. Retirement is not one long, undifferentiated stretch of time. A 63-year-old and an 83-year-old may both be retired, but they are not living in the same economic world. The earlier years often carry more energy, more mobility, more appetite for travel, more ability to tolerate novelty, and more practical freedom. Latter years may carry greater fragility, more medical appointments, less stamina, and narrower choices. Money is not equally useful in every season. That is an uncomfortable truth for spreadsheet worshipers because it means $1 received at 62 is not necessarily interchangeable with $1 received at 82. The younger retiree may use that money to see family travel while knees still work, help grandchildren at a meaningful time, pursue long postponed interests, or simply reduce stress while body and mind can still savor the relief. A larger check far later might look better on paper while delivering less real-life value. People talk about maximizing benefits. I am more interested in maximizing useful life. You cannot spend vigor later just because you saved money now. You cannot put vitality in a freezer. You either use your able years intelligently or you lose them. That is why I dislike retirement advice that treats all future years as if they were functionally identical. They are not. There is also the matter of household economics, which becomes especially important for married couples. A retirement decision is often framed as if one individual lives inside a vacuum-sealed jar. Real households do not operate that way. Your filing choice can affect when your spouse can claim certain benefits. Your filing timing can shape household cash flow years before the larger abstract payoff of delay arrives. In some cases, filing earlier unlocks spousal benefits that otherwise remain out of reach. That alone can materially alter the math. If one spouse has a much smaller earned benefit and the other has a larger one, the timing of the first claim can influence when the household starts drawing on the broader set of Social Security options available to it. And when people ignore this, they sometimes congratulate themselves for patience, while quietly costing the household tens of thousands of dollars over time. I have seen a great many mistakes arise from optimizing the wrong unit of analysis. The individual looks disciplined while the family balance sheet suffers. That is not wisdom. It is bookkeeping vanity. There is another related point that deserves more attention than it gets. Survivor benefits matter. If one spouse has the larger benefit and there are age or health differences in the marriage, then claiming strategy should not be discussed with the emotional flatness of a classroom exercise. If a surviving spouse may eventually step into the larger benefit, then the sequence and structure of claims can matter a great deal. Sometimes taking the smaller personal benefit earlier, while preserving or coordinating around the larger household benefit later, can produce a far better real-world outcome than blindly chasing the generic rule. Again, the issue is not whether delaying increases a check. Of course it can. The issue is whether the entire household, over the full arc of probable scenarios, is better served by delay. Those are not the same question, and only one of them is worth asking. Taxes are another trap for people who only look at the headline benefit number. A lot of retirees think in pre-tax terms without realizing it. They see the future Social Security check go up if they wait and assume that more is more. But whether more is more depends on what happens after taxes and after required withdrawals begin influencing the picture. Social Security taxation is tied to overall income levels. Retirement account withdrawals, required minimum distributions, realized gains, and other income sources can reshape how much of the benefit is effectively exposed. A smaller benefit claimed earlier during a lower income window can in some cases produce more spendable value than a larger benefit claimed later when other income sources have expanded the tax burden. That is not a slogan. It is a reminder that after-tax cash flow matters more than before. Tax theory, the government does not care how proud you are of waiting. It only cares what income shows up on the return. And if delaying Social Security pushes you into years where you are simultaneously taking larger retirement distributions or facing required minimum distributions, the larger check may not feel nearly as large as the brochure implied. This is why I tell people to stop treating retirement decisions as popularity contests. The common answer is not automatically the superior answer. The superior answer is the one that works after tax, after family considerations, after portfolio dynamics, after health realities, and after lifestyle priorities are honestly accounted for. I am not making a religion out of claiming at 62. I am making a case for thinking, but I have no patience for the idea that early claiming is automatically a blunder. That kind of blanket judgment is usually a sign that someone has confused a rule of thumb with a complete analysis. Let me tell you something else. Retirees underestimate. Psychology matters. A person who claims Social Security earlier and therefore withdraws less from investments may sleep better. That counts. A person who knows a baseline check is arriving each month may feel less pressure during market downturns. That counts too. Rational finance people sometimes sneer at psychological comfort as if it were intellectually soft. I think that is a mistake. If peace of mind prevents you from panic selling in bad markets, peace of mind has economic value. If predictable income allows you to preserve a more sensible portfolio allocation, it has economic value. If a modest but dependable stream of Social Security lets you stop obsessing over every market dip, it has economic value. The best investment plan in theory is often beaten by the good plan a human being can actually stick with in practice. Then there is work. Many retirees do not move from full-time employment to permanent inactivity overnight. Some consult, some freelance, some take part-time work, some earn enough to support daily needs without fully replacing a career paycheck. That can change the Social Security decision substantially. If modest work income is combined with an early claim strategy, some retirees create a flexible bridge that covers living expenses while allowing investment accounts more room to grow. The household is no longer forced into the false choice between all work and no work, or between total portfolio withdrawals and total delay. A hybrid can be very effective, and I have always liked flexibility when dealing with uncertain futures. A retirement plan that can bend is often superior to a retirement plan that looks optimized only if life cooperates perfectly. Now, I should say clearly that taking Social Security at 62 is not ideal for everyone. If a person has very little saved, expects strong longevity, is still earning substantial wages, or would be heavily penalized by earnings limits and other constraints, then the analysis may point elsewhere. If household cash flow is already secure, and the delayed larger benefit meaningfully improves the likely long-run outcome, then delaying can be entirely sensible. I am not peddling a universal formula. The whole point of this discussion is that universal formulas are dangerous when applied carelessly. What I am arguing against is the lazy habit of pretending that later is always superior because the nominal monthly benefit is larger. That is the sort of half-truth people love, because it sounds authoritative and requires no customization. I have seen enough financial damage caused by elegant half-truths to distrust them on sight. There is a deeper philosophical issue here. For years, many people are taught to postpone life in the name of security. Save now, live later, work now, enjoy later. Delay now, reward later. That principle has some wisdom in it. Without deferred gratification, very little wealth gets built. But people who are too good at postponing can become prisoners of postponement. They carry the accumulation mindset into retirement without realizing the game has changed. The object is no longer simply to die with the highest possible account value or the largest possible check. The object is to convert accumulated resources into a life that feels owned. That requires judgment. It requires timing. It requires recognizing when one more year of waiting is prudent, and when one more year of waiting is just fear wearing the mask of prudence. A great many people hide behind delay because delay feels virtuous. They tell themselves they are being disciplined when what they really are is uncertain, afraid, and psychologically unable to start using the resources they built. I have no contempt for that fear. Retirement is a major transition, but I do think fear should be named honestly. Otherwise, it sneaks into the math and pretends to be logic. Sometimes a person is not waiting because the numbers demand it. Sometimes he is waiting because claiming feels like crossing a line he has spent 40 years approaching. It means the paycheck chapter is really over. It means the identity built around work has changed. It means he must stop thinking like a collector and start thinking like a steward. That shift is emotional before it is financial, and many people do not realize how much it shapes their decisions. I have found that clear thinking often begins with stripping away these emotional disguises. Ask the blunt questions. If I delay Social Security, what exactly am I protecting? A higher future check. Yes, but at what present cost? How much must be withdrawn from other accounts? How much compounding is being sacrificed? How does this affect my spouse? What does this do to my taxes later? What if my health is not as durable as average tables suggest? What if the years I most want to use money well are the next 8, not the 8 after that? And perhaps the sharpest question of all, am I maximizing lifetime value or merely maximizing one visible line item? Those are the questions an adult allocator asks. The public conversation usually asks easier ones because easy questions are more marketable. But marketable advice and good advice are cousins at best. I prefer the latter. I also think people underestimate how powerful it is to preserve optionality. Claiming early can create room. Room to let invested assets ride longer. Room to spend less from tax-advantaged accounts. Room to adjust spending without panic. Room to do Roth conversions strategically. Room to help a spouse begin a related benefit stream. Room to do a little work on your own terms instead of out of desperation. Room to enjoy the years when enjoyment is still physically easy. Optionality is worth more than most people realize because the future is lumpy. Markets do not move in straight lines. Health does not move in straight lines. Families do not move in straight lines. A strategy that gives you more ways to adapt has real value, even if it looks less mathematically pure at first glance. And that is one reason early claiming deserves more respect than it gets. People hear early and think small. I hear early and ask what it makes possible. Now, I will tell you what I would not do. I would not make this decision based on a catchy line from a stranger who has never seen my tax return, my spouse's work history, my account mix, my withdrawal needs, my health profile, or my temperament. That would be foolish. The numbers should be run carefully. There are tools that can help estimate benefits, compare claiming ages, model withdrawals, and show how different sequences affect the broader plan. Good, use them. But use them with the proper objective, not to find the socially approved answer, to find the answer that aligns with reality. Reality is all that pays. And in retirement, guessing can be expensive in a very permanent way. Here is the punchline as I see it. Most people have been taught to think about Social Security as if patience is automatically rewarded. Sometimes it is. Sometimes patience is simply delay for its own sake. If taking benefits at 62 lets your other assets compound longer, reduces withdrawals, improves sleep, unlocks household benefits, manages taxes more intelligently, and funds the healthiest years of your retirement, then early claiming may not be the compromise. It may be the superior move. Not because 62 is magical. Because context is, I have spent my life allocating capital, and allocation is never about admiring one asset in isolation. It is about choosing the arrangement that produces the best overall outcome. Social Security is no different. The man who delays for the larger check may feel wise, but if he drained productive accounts, ignored his spouse's benefit timing, walked into a worse tax structure, and postponed his most useful years, he did not optimize retirement. He optimized a headline. I would rather optimize a life. That means I want enough guaranteed income to preserve calm. I want enough invested capital left alone to preserve compounding. I want a tax plan that respects timing. I want household decisions made at the household level. And I want money arriving during the period when money still buys the richest kind of freedom. That freedom is not abstract. It is time with fewer demands. It is choice without apology. It is the ability to help travel, rest, recover, and live without the old treadmill dictating every hour. Social Security is not the whole plan, but neither is it a side note. Handled poorly, it becomes one more source of confusion. Handled intelligently, it can be the bridge that allows the rest of the plan to work as intended. So when someone tells you that the smart move is always to wait, I would suggest you smile politely and ask a better question. Better for whom? Better under what tax picture? Better for which household? Better given what health outlook? Better if the portfolio must be drained while waiting? Better if the spouse's claim is delayed too? Better if your best years are now? A surprising amount of bad financial advice collapses the moment specific questions are asked. This subject is no exception. The smartest retirement decisions are rarely the ones that sound the cleanest in conversation. They are the ones that hold up after you drag them through the messiness of actual life. And actual life is where retirement is lived, not in a slogan, not in a chart, not in a smug sentence about how everybody should wait. I would rather have a good life with an intelligently used smaller check than a beautifully delayed check purchased with unnecessary stress, unnecessary withdrawals, and years I can never buy back. That is not impatience. That is valuation, and valuation, properly understood, has always been the heart of good decision-making.